First, we need to open the Amazon EC2 dashboard and launch new instances for Rancher server. We need to choose Rancher OS from the Amazon Marketplace and start launching it. Select the first one. Next, we are going to use T2 Medium for this demo. Note, we don't require Rancher servers to have very high specification. Next, we are going to set up two instances and then select a VPC and a subnet. I already have a VPC and a subnet, so I'm going ahead with it. Next, I'm adding 8 GB of volume storage and then tagging the instances with appropriate names. Here I'm using only 8 GB of volume drive as the data is essentially stored in an external database. In this demo, the data will be stored in Amazon RDS. Next, we go ahead with configuring the security groups. We need to allow port 8080 for communication with the Rancher server UI and 9345 for Rancher servers to communicate with each other. That is for high availability. In this demo, I'm allowing all traffic, all inbound traffic on all the ports within the VPC network. Next, we're reviewing the instances and then going ahead with launching it. Selecting a proper key pair and we can start launching the instances. Note we could have put both of the instances in two different availability zones, which would have ensured more fault tolerance and resilience. Bear in mind these two servers are in active passive mode and hence both servers are in load balancing traffic. Rather, one functions as a failover for the another. Let's check if the instances are up. Let's refresh the screen once. And there you go. Both the servers are up and running. Next, we require the private IPs for both the servers so that we can SSH into both of them. This is the private IP which we'll be using for SSHing into these servers. We need to note down these IP addresses as these are used to represent both the server's public endpoint and will be used in the cluster registration process. Essentially, what Rancher does is uses these IP to represent each other in the highly available cluster and put them into a single membership. So now we'll go ahead and try to SSH into both the servers and check whether they are working. We'll use the PuTTY client to connect to the servers. We'll enter the IP addresses which were mentioned earlier. So use this. We can to select the key pair which we use during the launch of these instances. Accept this. And then I guess it's Rancher. Nice, it got in. So we'll do the same thing for the other servers as well. So enter that particular IP address, select the key pair, and specify the same username password. Get it. Cool, we got in. Now, since both of them are up and running, now what we need to do is create an external database so that these two servers can interact with the database and store the configurational data on that database server. We'll go to the Amazon console and open the Amazon RDS. So once we'll create a database instance for the Rancher server, we'll select MySQL and then put into a dev/test environment. Here we are going to use a T2 small CPU and select that we don't require this to be spread across availability zones. So we are going to specify the instance name and have a master username and a password. This is required to enter into the database for the first time, and this essentially becomes the administrative username and password. Now, next, we are going to have a security group, but we can do this later on as well. We'll now select a VPC. I have an existing VPC. I'll put that database on that VPC, on the same VPC which Rancher is also running, and have a subnet group as well. I already have a subnet group, so I'm going ahead with it. So everything looks fine. I can go ahead with launching this database instance. Now, once the database is launched, it will have a public endpoint that becomes the host name for this particular Amazon RDS instance. We'll use that to go to store all the data from the Rancher server. So I'll fast forward the video as it takes quite a long time. And there you go, it started up. Now it has the endpoint available as well. Now we have to configure the security group as it is not accessible from every nodes. We need to add the server IP addresses and allow traffic on port 3306, but we will allow all the traffic coming in within the VPC network. That looks fine. And we'll go back to the instances and it's saying available. So we can now try to go inside that particular database, and we need to create the databases for Rancher as well. So let's give the username and password we mentioned earlier, and we need to create the database for Rancher. Here we are using the database called cattle, and then specifying a username with also name of cattle and granting permissions on this particular database. Once this is done, this will be available for Rancher to use and store its data within it. Now we'll go to the servers and run the Docker containers. The Docker containers for the server is self-sufficient to host the servers as well. So what I'll do is I'll specify the database which we just now created and the advertised address as 10.0.12.38. Similar thing I'm gonna do for the other server as well. Just gonna change the IP address from 10.0.12.1 to 44. So these become the node IP addresses, and they will get registered within the same membership and becomes part of the single cluster. So what happens is one server, if it is up and running, the other server is down. So what Rancher does currently is have either one of them in active mode, and once one of them goes down, the other comes up. Here in this case, it will show that both of them gets registered into one membership, and one of them will get elected as a master while the other one will try to connect to the master. It is an automatic process. For now we'll see the Docker logs for both and monitor them. As you can see, they're loading the script. Now both of the servers got registered into the cluster, and one of them started loading all the scripts. So 10.0.12.38 became the active node, and the Rancher server is now right now running on that particular server. So the other one becomes a failover, and once this is down, the master node is down, this will come back up. Now we'll go and check whether the Rancher UI is available. We'll go and type 10.38 as it's the master currently, and there you can see it's opening up. Nice, we got in. So welcome to Rancher. Now what we'll do is create an environment. What environment is a set of a logical grouping of a set of nodes. Here I'm going to create a Kubernetes environment and call it Kubernetes dev. and specify orchestrator as Kubernetes. So if I now go ahead and add hosts to this particular environment, this becomes part of this particular environment. And later on, we can have something like Kubernetes production, where we will have another set of servers. Both becomes isolated from each other, and that becomes easier to maintain. So I can see right now there are no hosts. In a later video, we'll show how I will add hosts to this particular environment. Now you can see it's 10.0.12.38. It becomes a single IP. Now it becomes very tedious to manage that particular IP. So what we'll do is we'll go to the Route 53 service, which is available in Amazon. And what we'll do is inside the private hosted zone, which I already have one of them, we'll create a record set and add both of these IP addresses over there. So what essentially becomes a single entry point for these servers. I don't need to worry about a particular IP address. All I need to worry about is this particular DNS name. And this DNS name is later on used for Kubernetes API as well. So I'm going to add both the IP addresses. What essentially additionally you can do is have an elastic load balancer sitting in front. Would essentially do the same. But there is a bug currently where the servers are not getting updated properly. So we'll try to go ahead and enter this IP address, the DNS name, and you can see it's working. Cool. So I'm not giving an IP address. I don't need to worry about the underlying IP infrastructure. You can see now I can add a new host and the endpoint becomes the endpoint which I just now provided. In the later video, I'll show you how